the returns that must be made to the government. And some of our great universities even have vice presidents in charge of relations with the government. The same thing comes out, for example, also in our animosity to nature in the sense of wanting to obliterate distance. We want to go faster and faster everywhere we go, and so annihilate the span of the earth between ourselves and the place we want to reach. But what is the ultimate result of this? Just think of it. If you're getting faster and faster from point to point, and obliterating the distance between points, two things happen. In the first place, all points that are set next to each other by, say, jet propulsion, tend to become the same point. In other words, the faster you can get from Los Angeles to Hawaii, the more Hawaii becomes exactly like Los Angeles. And therefore tourists keep asking, well, has it been spoiled yet? And by that they mean, is it just exactly like home? And furthermore, if we begin to think about our goals in life as destinations, as points to which we must get, it begins to cut out all that makes the point worth having. It's like saying, well, instead of giving you a full banana to eat, I will give you the two precise ends of the banana. And that would not be, in any sense, a satisfactory meal. But that is what happens as we tend to fight our environment and to want to get rid of the wonderful limitation of space and distance. And you know, if we carry this kind of thing to its ultimate extreme, we get into a most extraordinary tangle, which I think I could very well illustrate in this way. Let's go and have a look over here at a sentence which has been written on the board. That is a sentence which is behaving like we are behaving in our mistrust of nature. That is a sentence which fundamentally does not trust itself. And it says of itself, this statement is false. Now, what do you see funny about that? This sentence behaves in an extremely peculiar way. Because if it is true, then it is not true. And if it's not true, then that's what it says. That it isn't true, so it's true. So that if this statement is true, it is false. And if it is false, it is true. And so on and so on. In other words, the meaning of the sentence is oscillating. It's shaking from true to false, like an electric bell vibrating. And in other words, you might say that this particular sentence is suffering from anxiety. For anxiety is the condition that comes upon us when we fundamentally mistrust ourselves, when we mistrust our own nature, and are trying to keep such a tight grip on it that we start to tremble, as one's hand starts to tremble if you become extremely anxious to hold it still. Now, Chinese thinking, of which there are really two main currents, the Taoist current and the Confucian. Taoist, that's spelled Taoist, and Confucian. And both of these main currents of Chinese thought agree on one fundamental principle, and that is that the natural world in which we live and human nature itself must basically be trusted. They would say of a person who can't trust his own nature, well, if you can't trust your own nature, how can you trust your very mistrusting of it? How do you know that that's not wrong too? And so if you don't trust your own nature, you are as fundamentally balled up as anyone can get. Now it's interesting to look at the fundamental Chinese word, which we translate as nature, because it has a rather different meaning from the word that we use. In Chinese, nature is written like this. You know that Chinese characters are fundamentally pictures. And this first one is the picture that used to be a face. And so it means oneself, or of itself. And the second character, I don't know what this was originally, it's become now a very abstract figure. That means so. And so the whole figure means of itself so. And we should give the rough English equivalent of that as spontaneity. That which happens of itself, just in the same way, for example, that your hair is growing by itself, your heart is beating by itself, so that if you feel your pulse, you get this funny sensation of movement going on inside your body, and you think, I'm not doing that. That's something queer going on inside me over which I have no control. But when you come to think of it, what is more fundamental? What is more central to you? What is more the very middle of yourself than your own heart? And so, this idea of nature, that which happens of itself so, is a process which is fundamentally not under our control, which is happening all on its own, just as our breathing is happening all on its own, and just as our heart beating is happening all on its own. And the fundamental thought of Taoist philosophy is that this self-so process has to be trusted. If you turn now to Confucian ideas, we will find another word that represents the basis of human nature. This word, written like this, has a funny pronunciation. Although